Welcome also, I'm delighted to say, to Tim Montgomery. He's a former Number 10 advisor and founder of Conservative Hope. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Lovely to see you, Julia.
Lovely to see you. Well, I suppose I must ask you, first of all, about Keir Starmer. He's giving this press conference right now. Apparently he's going to say a number of key things. One thing is he wants to bring back trust in politics. This is following this cronyism row of the Labour donor Wahid Ali getting a AAA Downing Street pass. Now, you'll know what that is because you worked in Number 10 as an advisor. This is basically an access all areas pass, which you would get if you were, for instance, the Director of Communications, the head of the policy unit. A lot of very senior people would have the Prime Minister and his wife and kids. But he had a pass, and apparently he still had it on Friday when the Sunday Times contacted Labour Party about this story, but then suddenly doesn't have it and may have given it back a few weeks ago, but no one knows why he had it or who approved it. Why would a Labour donor need a AAA Downing Street pass so he could just walk in and out, go wherever he wanted at any time in Number 10?
Well, one reason why he shouldn't have one is because Downing Street is the heart of government, and people are vetted for very important reasons when they go into Downing Street by the civil service, by the security services, because there is an awful lot of confidential material in that
lying
building.
around.
Sometimes lying around, but certainly in certain offices. So you would not want anyone just to be able to walk in certain offices, see what's on people's screens.
Unless they're sort of part of the government. Now, he's a Labour
unless they've
peer.
been approved. Now, I'm sure he is ethically fine, but he hasn't been through that vetting process. And until you've been through that vetting process...
Won't he have had to have gone through it to get that pass?
Well, he should have gone through a vetting process to be a Downing Street member of staff. There is a different process to get to pass.
Okay, so when Keir Starmer, as he's doing right now, speaks in the Rose Garden Number 10, and again, bearing in mind, we'll all remember the Rose Garden press conference, because we were doing nothing other than watching telly and read and listening and listening to radio, was when, of course, Dominic Cummings gave his press conference justifying his trip to Barnard Castle and in the Rose Garden because he had to be outside. And then, of course, we learned a lot about the Downing Street Rose Garden because there were these big drunken parties at Number 10. It wasn't just someone having cake on their birthday.
Which I was never invited to.
You were never
invited.
That's why you're cross. That's why. God, I have to say, looking at the state of those, these people do not throw good parties. Anyway, so we know about the Downing Street Rose Garden because that reason. Of course, people also might remember when David Cameron formed the coalition government with Nick Clegg, they had that joint press conference. I was there at that evening. So is this all about? He wants to bring trust back to politics, you know. But does cronyism matter? Is it a fair criticism? Does it matter to most people who are worrying right now about their energy bills going up, their grandmother not getting her winter fuel allowance, and queuing up for NHS appointments, who've been burgled and the police haven't bothered to turn up? I mean, people who can't get a train because there's more trains. If you go through all the things that most people are dealing with right now, do we really care? Does it really matter if a bloke who gave £500,000 to the Labour Party over a number of years apparently gave 20-odd grand to Keir Starmer so he could buy in suits or buy suits and glasses? A man on a significant six-figure salary but apparently can't afford his own clothes, I find a bit bizarre in terms of his money management, might explain a lot about the coming budget. Does any of this matter?
Look, I think what you said in your question, you sort of made the key point. People are concerned about waiting lists. They're concerned about failure to prosecute shoplifters, etc. They're worried about the country. Now, does it make a difference? Because a lot of the civil servants in our country today are actually quite resistant to policies that the government that we've elected want. If, and these are three big ifs, Julia, if putting these people into the government machine, because they know the Labour politicians they're working with, they know what they want to achieve, makes a difference to having the people's business actually being achieved, I see no problem.
I don't have a problem with someone getting a job. I mean, we've had there's one guy who's been appointed, who's been a minor Labour donor, and he's been appointed, hasn't he? Let me find his name here. I can't find it anywhere. Of course, you can never find it when you're looking for these things. But you know, so there have been some people who've been appointed because they've, you know, and they're playing a role. But that's different because Wahid Ali doesn't have a role. He's just he's a fundraiser.
That's different. But there are some of these appointments inside the Treasury, inside other organisations, where the Labour ministers clearly have a good working relationship with these people. They've worked with them in opposition.
I don't have a problem with political appointees as long as it's all above board.
It should be transparent. We should know how the appointments are made. They're vetted for security, obviously, as we've just been discussing. But, you know, SPADs are sort of a slightly controversial innovation in Whitehall. And the problem with them generally is, in my experience, they're too young and too inexperienced.
What experience is a 22-year-old going to give to how to run government?
They don't have the knowledge to navigate the government machine. thing, but actually having people who know they've been around the block once or twice and actually can get stuff done, partly because of experience, but partly because they know the ministers they're working for. That's a really good thing.
I'm a very, very big fan of bringing in people, you know, remember like people like Digby Jones and people like that into government, bringing in people who've got a successful track record who can do stuff. I'm just not sure. Like, look, I want money out of politics anyway. They say they need all this money.
That's never going to happen.
Well, it could happen. If there's a will, where there's a will, there's a way. You know, it's infected American politics. American political life is completely and utterly infected. And I would say it is no longer in any meaningful way a democracy in America because big money rules. I think we're getting that way here. I don't think that somebody, because they're a billionaire, I voted Leave. I still didn't think that, you should have people like Aaron, Aaron Banks being able to sort of, having to bankroll Leave.eu. It shouldn't have been necessary. I think we can live without the targeted Facebook ads and the billboards and a load of the silly press conferencey things they do that are all just, completely, made up, with hangers-on who are standing in T-shirts cheering. I think you could cut out a lot of the costs of politicking and get back to basics, and then you'd have to have less of that stuff, and there would be more about actual solid policies. That's what I think. I would get the money out entirely. But certainly, once you've given money, I think there should be a general. If you're going to give money, you don't get any meetings. You have to know it's completely above board, and I don't think that's possible. If you give more than 10 grand, I think you're having an impact and you're getting a bigger say than I get with my one vote or my audience get with their one vote, and I think that is screwing up democracy.
I think there should be limits on how much money you should give to a political party.
I'm going to make it 10k. You're not going to influence people with 10k.
But I don't think people who should give money should therefore have fewer rights than people who don't.
But it's a way of making sure that they're not.
Yeah,
they're not getting
that's why
something.
I think the cap is more important than not giving them any rights.
Well, look, I want to ask you about this, but I also want to ask you about other things as well. But there is lots to talk about today. Keir Starmer has vowed to bring back trust in politics after the Labour donor cronyism row. Do you trust Keir Starmer to clean up politics? Simple question. Tell us why you do. Tell us why you don't. Give us a call 03444 499 1000. You can send a WhatsApp to the same number. You can text on 87222. Get in touch on X at TalkTV. Calls to charge at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. If you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a message at the bottom, and you can do that for free, of course. Right, I also want to talk about other big stuff that's in the news. I mean, we're going to keep up with what Keir Starmer is saying. Again, he's talking about how things are going to get worse before a decade of national renewal. He's already bidding for a second term. He only on the national vote scraped through for his first term. So good luck with that, Keir Starmer.
I'm genuinely surprised, actually, how poorly this government has done in its early stages. I thought it would be more competent. And the basic thing of its set-piece event, the biggest set-piece event was Rachel Reeves saying there's no money left, and then them throwing money to the trade unions. It just, I don't know whether they are arrogant or incompetent.
I think they're both.
Or a combination of both.
I think they absolutely are both. Well, let's talk about incompetence, because I think that we are talking about incompetence when we talk about the inability to deal with crime in this country. There are three big stories involving crime today. One, we're going to talk about Nottingham Carnival in a moment, but one is violent offenders being let off if they say sorry. I kid you not, people. This is just an extraordinary story. Where this is on the front of the Telegraph today, and basically, if you're a knife or sex offender even, you're allowed to escape prosecution. More than 147,000 people accused of offences, including sex crimes, violence, weapons possession, so knifers, have been given community resolutions in the year to March. Now, this is happening under the Tories instead of being prosecuted. So you don't get a criminal record, you accept responsibility, you say sorry, offer some sort of recompense, and then that's it. In the meantime, on the lower end of the scale, we've also got, of course, and we've seen this for years, the shameful neglect of shoplifting. Well, this is something Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary, but with the time we look at these figures, but is now Home Secretary. She says police officers, need to tackle this shameful neglect. In the year to March this year, just 431 shoplifters were handed fixed penalty notices, which is basically the least you could get for stealing less than 100 quid's worth of stuff. That's a 98% drop from a decade ago, which is extraordinary. Majority of police forces don't even issue a penalty for shoplifting in the whole of the last year, and it's only when you steal something over 200 quid they'll take it vaguely seriously. You can have hundreds of offences and not go to jail. We have got an absolute, whether it's serious offences, whether it's minor offences, such as someone stealing your stuff if you own a shop is minor offence, we have a crisis of policing, do we not, Tim?
So funny you read out that particular paragraph on shoplifting. It just sort of stood out to me as well. Basically, we have decriminalised shoplifting.
Yep.
There is no penalty in the majority of police force areas in the whole country for stealing.
And
stuff.
most shop owners know that.
Yeah, and I, have sympathy for anyone who's the victim of the breaking of the law. And Marks and Spencer.
But people seem to think it's a victimless crime. It's not a victimless crime.
It isn't, particularly if you're a little shop owner. You know, a couple of shops I know in Salisbury where I live, where basically almost their whole profit margin has been wiped out by the cost of shoplifting.
Shops in my local high street in London, I've talked to other shopkeepers, and I've lived there a long time, we've got to know everybody, and they say, these shops have actually closed down because they simply can't make a profit anymore because the shoplifting is so off the scale. And I live in a nice part of London. I'm not living on a sink estate.
No, there's the cost of security as well. So I remember when I first came to sort of London, probably sort of 30 years ago, you had security guards on the doors of like jewellery shops and top shops.
And now they have them,
they're everywhere. On little super, they have them at
Superdrug.
Tesco,
No, exactly.
Because it's a massive problem, and they have to employ security guards because the police don't do anything.
Yeah, absolutely, and even security guards aren't able to tackle. Well, look, let's talk about the police not acting or acting in occasion at Notting Hill Carnival. Of course, it's a 3-day carnival. It's a celebration of Caribbean culture. I used to go regularly. I lived in Ladbroke Grove, which is near Notting Hill. I live now a 15-minute drive away. I can still hear it in my back garden. I can certainly hear the police helicopters circling, including at 5 o'clock this morning. Thanks, Metropolitan Police. Really enjoyed that. I don't have to get up before 5 anymore. Please don't wake me up at 5. But just extraordinary numbers. 330 people were arrested. Now, they reckon about 1 million people attend over those 3 days. But a lot of those people will be coming back again and again. But 330 people arrested. But we're not talking about, urinating in public and littering. We are talking about very serious...
There's a lot of that.
It's 18 for possession of an offensive weapon. That was just on Sunday alone. 18 officers assaulted. We're talking about someone with corrosive substances and acid of some sort. But crucially also 8 stabbings, 3 people, including a mother who was with her young child in a pushchair, being stabbed, remaining in a critical condition. 35 police officers also injured. And we've seen social media is all covered in these images of sort of some of the violence, but also the women sort of twerking all over the police officers dancing. Now,
you see them stood on the top of that bus shelter.
That's a few years old.
Oh, is that
that one? That's the thing. A lot of the images, but they know exactly. They're real, but they're people. It's kind of it's a big party.
Yeah.
Look, here's the thing. I've been to it. The reason I stopped going was actually because I got in a crush one time. It was the crowd control just wasn't happening, and genuinely, I think it is a matter of luck that 20 people didn't die in that crush. It was so badly policed, and they should have been stopping people going down into an area that was narrower than where people were coming from. People have to board up their homes who live around there. Now, you might say, oh, come on, you chose to live there. Yeah, if you've chosen to move there in the last 10 years, well, I'm sorry, what were you thinking? But there are people who've lived there, the family home there, for, decades and decades. This carnival wasn't like that in the past. A lot of people are saying this is two-tier policing, that people are allowed to get away with, lewd behaviour, you say urinating in the street, sexual assault, smoking drugs openly in front of police. No action is taken because it's Notting Hill Carnival. If those people did that anywhere else, if they did that on the way back from a football match, they would be arrested. If they did it at some sort of Tommy Robinson organised event, they would be arrested for exactly those same things. Is this an example of two-tier policing? And is this also, to a certain extent, an example of the poverty of low expectations, which is that, it's a carnival, it's Caribbean, it's black, it's a largely black festival, though plenty of white people attend. Of course, it's open to everyone. But is it actually like, of course there'll be stabbings at the carnival, that's fine, even though you don't see stabbings at Glastonbury or the Reading Festival or things like that. So why do we expect that this would happen at Notting Hill?
Well, what I would like to know is actually relative to an average weekend or week in London, how do these numbers compare? Because I think you describe them as horrific, and the numbers are horrific, but a lot of the statistics in London are horrific at the moment. My overall view, though, Julia, is related to what we were just talking about. If you encourage a culture in Britain where people know that they can walk into a shop and empty the shelves, where they know that they can take a drug illegally and smoke it underneath someone else's flat,
or carry a knife,
etc., why should people think that other rules are going to be enforced by the police? And you know, we are both familiar, I think, with what Rudy Giuliani did in New York. It was called zero tolerance policing, and it meant that if you allowed the little crimes, you allow people to think they could get away with small things.
The littering, even jaywalking, even like crossing the road against the light,
whatever. Suddenly, the public realm will be slowly but surely taken over by bigger and bigger crimes.
And it has been.
It has been.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in New York before and after that with Giuliani, and the impact was huge. I mean, it was huge. There's been lots of criticism of it since, but it was huge. Again, it just seems to me, we've just kind of given up the streets. Is it time for the Notting Hill Carnival to be moved, though? Because, I mean, the impact on local people, the impact on you know, the damage in the area, and the inability of the police, by the way, who we paid for, and, you know, to actually, you know, cover the, you know, to deal with this. Is it time to cancel the event? Is it time to move the event, say, to Hyde Park or somewhere like that, so it can be properly organised police, you can have proper entry and exit points?
Yeah, I wouldn't cancel it, because there's a lot of still wonderful stuff that happens at that
Most
festival.
people are there to have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I haven't been for a few years, but when I have been...
We are old.
We are a little bit old. It was great fun. Perhaps it needs to be a little bit more limited, a bit more, certainly better policed. Perhaps more private security needs to be hired by the organiser.
Like football clubs are expected to do so. They have to pay towards the cost of the policing. But I'm paying for the cost of policing an event I now won't go to because I don't think it's policed safely enough.
Yeah, but I would rather make what is still a great festival work rather than cancel it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, but I'd move it. But I think it needs to move. I don't think you can deal with it when it's in a residential area. Yeah. I want to hear from you. Is it time to cancel or move the event? What do you make of what many people are saying is two-tier policing of this event? You've probably seen a lot of the videos. Some of them actually aren't from this year, but nevertheless, they are, should we say, indicative of what goes on. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000, text on 87222. Get in touch on X at TalkTV as well. As I also want to hear from you about Keir's summer speech. We'll get into a bit more detail in a few moments about what he's had to say, because he's been talking about economic growth and wealth creation is the #1 priority of this Labour government. I'm not quite sure how this Labour government is going to promote economic growth and wealth creation, given that they're going to make energy more expensive and unreliable, and they're busy paying off the unions, and they're going to give workers an absurd level of new rights. I'm a worker, not an employer, but I still think these are absurd levels of new rights, which are going to make it harder for employers to actually employ people. I mean, it doesn't add up.
A friend of mine who runs a small business in Salisbury, a really fast-growing firm, and he said, like, if he gets, he's got one job vacancy, and he said he gets 2 people who apply for it who are really good. He said, I've always thought, I don't want to lose that person. I'll hire 2 and I'll help, me to expand. He said, I just can't, I won't be able to afford to take that risk in future because it'll be too expensive to give them rights if they don't work out. And so who's going to suffer from this employment law? Ultimately, it'll be that young aspirant worker who wants the job and they won't get it.
Exactly, completely agree with you.